This is Making Better Decisions. I'm your host, Ryan Sullivan. Decisions are where rubber meets the road for organizations. Each week, we'll be learning from people who are on the front lines of turning raw data into better outcomes for their organizations. This show is sponsored by Canopy Analytic, helping companies make better decisions using data. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Making Better Decisions podcast. Today's guest holds a bachelor's degree in electronics engineering and has become an expert in business. He is a four-time B2B software founder who has been building businesses for 30 years. He has founded and led companies such as AriaSoft and Logi Analytics, and has also done nonprofit board work for Inspire. Please welcome founder and CEO of Qrvey, Arman Eshraghi. Welcome to the show, Arman.
Thank you very much for having me. It's great to be here.
The pleasure is mine, I assure you. I want to start you off with the same question that we give to everybody. What is one thing you wish more people knew about using data to make better decisions?
Well, data is really multidimensional entity. So as you all know, in fact, data is something that can help you, but at the same time, the quality of data needs to be good to be meaningful. So keeping the quality of the data high is something that is not easy to do. But if you do it right, then the data is valuable. And if you don't do it right, really the data is not going to be that helpful. And you have, just spend time and money to collect it doesn't mean it's necessarily super helpful. So definitely what I would like to focus if in any organization first is to make sure the right data rather than just having data, right? And if they have the right data that works for their use case, then that's great. Then they are in a very good position. And if they don't have the right data, the question is defining that what the right data is. And it's something that you need to go from very end result, meaning that what kind of metrics, what kind of answers can help you, and then going backward and then getting to the original kind of idea of collecting data. And this is the way the data is originated, and how should I massage or keep the data, and how should I collect the data in order to make sure I get what I want at the end.
Yeah. I think this really is kind of the great question in the data field is kind of data within businesses is about the effective allocation of capital towards data actions that are going to have a return. And I think that question is the one that I see most frequently not asked or not answered well. There is this, I think, set of different desires that lead people in different directions. You may have like the completionist. We're going to do absolutely everything perfect. Every morsel of data will be here. It will be clean. It will be perfect. You have a person where kind of like myself, right? Oh, I'm interested in this topic. So we'll go over here and do that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's the most impactful to the business. So let's say that we have a listener that's a part of an organization that agrees, hey, this is a huge piece of the puzzle, the kind of strategy of what we spend our data dollars on. What advice or recommendations would you give them to figure out what those use cases are and how their business can see tangible value from them so that then they can back in the work they need to do?
Definitely, going a step by step makes more sense to me, right? So I understand in some cases you may have the tendency to really think about the grand schema and say, I need to really build everything in a perfect way in a big data warehouse or data lake and bring all of the data I need. And unless I, get to that point, there's nothing else that matters. I think really doing it phase by phase is the best approach, because regardless, you're going to learn a lot. And just having some questions answered, not all of the questions at the first phase, is good. I mean, you build this, and to be honest with you, in the very old days, everything was so rigid, and all of the data engines and the data schema and the data models, that you maybe had to really go that route.
Yeah.
But now you have more elastic options. You have more kind of, flexible options that you can modify. You can change your data model as you go, and it doesn't really require overhaul of everything that you have done. So, with that in mind, as long as you cater to a more flexible model that can evolve over time, I think the best approach would be to start something small, see the result, you like it, and then go to the next phase, add a little bit to it. And, every quarter, every 6 months, you see better model until you get where you want. But it's not like, spending, investing, risking a lot of time and money, and it doesn't happen, then it's a big disappointment to everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm curious to know, given your experience, right? You've been in the field of working with businesses, figuring out what their needs are from a software perspective. That type of career seems to me like it would give you a really solid idea of what are the the general processes that are common to all businesses and how those processes should be optimized or how those processes can generate return on investment, things like that. I'm curious to know if you have any thoughts on how a business should think about the concept of data strategy. And before you answer, I want to make one point that I know that we talked about already, which is data strategy in and of itself is not an end, right? Like data and all of these tools that we're using, these are supposed to help us achieve our company goals, whether that's, profit or helping people or whatever the company goals are. How can an organization really narrow down what they should be focused on?
Yeah, so a number of things, you know, I can look at it from different aspects. So one aspect is understanding that the data that you collect and it's part of the transactions happening in your organization or somewhere else, that data that is needs to be highly normalized from transactional perspective to be the best data, and the best way you orchestrate and the way you model your data is not necessarily the best model for analytics and getting the data out. So if you oversimplify everything and say all of these applications I see, they have two parts: getting the data in and getting the data out. Just oversimplifying for a second.
Sure.
Getting the data in is a different world than getting the data out. And if you mix these two and just you refer to both as data, it may cause some confusions, right? So you have to really all the time keep in mind that am I talking about the data I'm getting in, or am I talking about the data I'm getting out? Now, if you look at that way, then there are ways to really optimize on both sides. And when you get the data in, of course, there are different tactics, different techniques, different ways that you can do. And when you get the data out, then at that point, the question is, okay, should I really make all of the data available for the self-service use case? Should I make all the data available? Maybe some are good for data as a service, maybe some are not. And then you will define the data uh, and the way it is based on the use cases that you have on either side. And when it comes to getting the data out, you just list all of your use cases depending on if you're an organization working with partners, and partners need to have access to their own data to be empowered. And then what kind of data? Then that data can be provided to them as a service, or you may provide them insight more than just data. There are a lot of questions, but first we need to separate the data in and data out. The other aspect of really looking at the data and just understanding, okay, this is really where I wanted to really talk about my data, is also honestly how much you wanted to is it the data for internal use cases or for external use cases? That changes everything, because if the data is for external use cases, not for your employees inside your organization, then in that case you are talking about really tenants, and each of those organizations, each of those customers, each of your department, whatever you have outside the company, you are serving them, not your employees. Each of them can count as a tenant, and you can sign up more tenants probably over time. If you're a SaaS company, you might have thousands of these tenants that you're serving. And that is, again, another aspect of the data. How much multi tenancy is part of the equation, right? Now, forgetting about all of those, then there's another aspect that comes to place, and that's about how impactful the no code, low code, self service aspect really is to your organization, to your use cases. Because if you want to really be very flexible, you want your, um, let's say, tenants have more control. If you want them to have no code control, not just to be developers and no, be data engineers to really do what they wanted to do, but be just a regular business user. But you know that the simplicity comes with some restrictions. So definitely you need to carve out the right sandbox for each of these users, if they are business users or power users or they are super users. And then after that, so there are so many different kind of aspects that each of one of them can really look at, um, can be looked at differently and answer your question from that particular perspective.
One of the areas that I'm interested to get your thinking on is lots of times here on the podcast when we talk about analytics, um, our guests have pretty heavily covered the I do some flavor of analytics within an organization. So it's very internal. There obviously have been some exceptions. Some people have been in centralized analytics. Some people have been in like marketing analytics or sales or supply chain. Right. So we've had that. But my personal experience is that some of the questions that you just asked become particularly important when you are building for someone outside your organization. And whether it is direct access to data or it is pre-built analytics or just like very, very simple, cookie cutter, like you need to know how many people signed up, things like that. That's very different when you're building it for a client. So I'm curious to know a little bit more about the perspective of data when that data is essentially the back end of an application and is a product. Tell me a little bit about some of the considerations there.
So I need to go back a little bit to your previous question and answer this question at the same time. And
Sure.
that's about the level of flexibility that you need, right? So the level of flexibility, it goes back to, for example, this is some use cases, some users that you can really dig into the details, understand the requirements and everything, and then you can start the work. Or this is something that you don't even would not possibly logically know all the requirements. It's not possible. For example, if you are an organization that you sign up other tenants, and then let's say, for example, you are selling to um, a nonprofit organizations, or you're selling to wildlife reservation, whatever domains that you are serving, the next customer that you sign up, it may add more requirements to you that you didn't know about it. So those, it's a totally different way of looking at it versus you are an organization, very well defined organization, mature organization. You are a bank, you are an insurance company, and you wanted to really go there and just build something for that very well defined use case with very well defined users. And you have access to everything and you can really dig into the details and know all of the requirements. And it's not going to drastically change every year just because, some people added to the organization. So those are two totally different worlds, that I'm planning for unknowns every day versus I'm planning to create something for a very known situation. And if really you are planning for unknowns, you need to put flexibility, extensibility, everything as top priority, because that will empower you to really answer the questions and do what you are supposed to do for your organization whenever that those things happen. And it will happen, right? It's a matter of when, not if. As soon as you sign up a new organization, new requirements will be in. And if you are really working with a very well defined environment, it's totally different. In that case, you can really go there and just spend more time researching, defining everything. And you don't need to really just emphasize too much on flexibility. And you need to spend your time more on really just the very well known requirement is there, just to spend more time and just do it the way the user base wants you to do.
One of the other things that you mentioned was talking a bit more about some of the low code, no code options that are out there. When you talked about that, did you mean from the perspective of the consumer? So a consumer doesn't need to know how to do code in order to get the insights, or were you talking about doing development of data applications with no or low code?
Great question. That's another area that requires a lot of clarification, and honestly, there is no universally accepted terminology for that. So everyone can come up with some terminology and just define it and use it. But the way, perhaps for the sake of this discussion, we can come up with is that uh, there are end users and they wanted to really make some changes. And depending on the, again, use case, depending on what you wanted to do, what kind of users you are working with, that end user and the level of flexibility they need and the level of changes they wanted to make might be different. And they need something that, in that case, I would name it self-service. Just again, not a universally accepted terminology for that particular use case. Some people may have a broader definition of self-service, but that way you can say that self-service capability. End users can change what they want. For example, you have created something for them, and they can change their alerts. They can look at the visualization, change the visualization. They can really go there and add a workflow on top of this kind of visualization. They can even do some transformations on the data if you let them, and then massage the data a little bit and define a new metric maybe for themselves, all of those, right? So, and then you have the other part type of users that they are power users. They are not developers, but they know the data very well. They are very savvy. If you give them the spreadsheet to really do magically a lot of things on that spreadsheet and bring all of the data they need, and they have a good sense of how the data works and how does it relate to each other and everything. And those people need much more power, but they're not coders. So if you want to empower them, you need to provide them a no code, low code environment. And without that, you're not going to be able to empower them because you'll leave them either to become a developer, which they're not, and requires a lot of other kind of expertise and training, or you force them to become very end user and limit what they want to do, right? So the only way to give them a path to really do what they want to do is a very powerful low code, no code environment in front of them. And they can go to a very, very good level of, doing what they want to do because these low code, no code environments can be very, very comprehensive. And the reason I separate the words a little bit, just, I need a different word, but I wish I could come up with a better word. The reason I separate the self-service in this discussion from low code, no code, because I wanted to really just have something special for the power users, not, and then something special for end users. And these two are not the same. So if I use the same word for both of them, it will be confusing, right? And I need to be very clear in my mind when I work with business users and how to empower them versus how I work with power users and empower them.
Yeah. This is something that as a software developer, you are extremely familiar with. We also talk about this a lot in data, but there is in any given solution a trade off between what I'll call completeness and how approachable the tool is. So I can make something that gives somebody all of the capability in the world. You could do anything with this, but that's going by definition to be hard to use because it can do anything. So everything's not pre-done. It's not going to be accessible. I'm going to need some sort of, complicated interface. Um, it's going to have to be open to allow somebody to do anything. And conversely, if I make something that's unbelievably easy to use, well, then I kind of had to pre-build that. And as a result, I think that when you talk about you really need to provide something on either side of that spectrum, something that is easy to use for the population that has to have something easy to use, and something that provides the capabilities to generate things that are outside what has been pre-built. I find that all of the best solutions in data have both of those avenues. I'm interested to get your take um, as a founder, as a leader, your personal data needs, and how do you think about the data for your organization. Lots of the listeners are also leaders in data fields. And there's one perspective that we talked about, which is, data as a service, building analytics for other people. But I think you're uniquely positioned to talk a little bit about how you think about data and consume it yourself.
I would like for everybody in my organization, including myself, to know that particular function that we serve very well, so that lead us to ask questions. And if we can get the answer sooner, better answer and sooner, that will help our business rather than I want to know this, but I don't have the answer. How can we do that? There are cases that I need that metric. There are cases I need that answer. And I realize that I really don't have the kind of the data that can feed into that answer. I don't have just the base data. In that case, I have to go to someone in charge of data, either on the marketing side, sales part, there is a person that is in charge of really feeding the data, very technical guy, a super user actually, or in many cases, majority of the cases, actually the data is there. And then I use the tools that I need in order to really create the insight I want. And I play that kind of, power user role, but also sometimes I'm end user, meaning that I just go to that application and it gives me the kind of metric. But if some kind of changes, I can change the metric, I can change the visualization, I can do the comparison. Some of the things that I don't need to be a power user to do that, I can do it as an end user. But I will exercise kind of, you know, uh, my rights as a kind of end user first. And if it gets to any roadblock, then I will extend that with my special power as a power user. And if I cannot still get it done and I get to a point that I hit the wall and really the data, the underlying data is missing in order for me to really get what I want, at that case I make inquiry and then I need to wait, and that may become a bottleneck if those inquiries are a lot. And that means the organization is not at the right level if I have to make these inquiries every week. If I need to make these inquiries every 6 months, it doesn't bother me. And if that inquiry can be addressed in a week or two, doesn't bother me. And if it's not super expensive, doesn't bother me. So all of those things that really tells me if I'm at the right place or my organization is not at the data readiness level that I want, right? So I think as an organization, we are doing well. So I'm not concerned about it. I'm not talking about Qrvey technology. I'm talking about just the internal Qrvey organization and everybody working with Jira, working with HubSpot on the marketing side, working with Salesforce, working with whoever at any division, working with the tools that they need, but also getting the data they want. And we are very, as you can guess, very very data driven organization, and we deal with data every single day in every organization, in every part of our organization, from HR to sales to marketing to CX and customer services to engineering and QA and everything we do, DevOps. Everybody is relying on data every single day, and we are really monitoring a lot of metrics to run our organization very smoothly, and understanding how to improve upon. And that's the way we look at the data, right? So all of us should be able to really play an end user role, should possibly be a power user when needed, and then we should have access to data engineers when we need them to improve our data foundation.
As you were talking, it struck me how similar we are in that regard, right? Obviously, being an analytics consultant for 10-ish years, um, when I have a decision to make about my own business, my brain doesn't think about like pros and cons. I think about, okay, what do I need in order to model this decision? And then I'll let the model make the decision. So I've kind of trained that feedback loop in my head. If I have a decision that I don't know what to do with, it's immediately like, we're going to use data to answer this question. And in your own answer, you kind of highlighted the technical capabilities that you have, where you're kind of, hey, do we have something that can answer this question quickly? If no, then, I'm a power user. I'll go in, I'll, take a look at what we have. If that doesn't work, like, all right, I'll write some queries, I'll dig right in. Right. So I think for the folks who are like that, that are very technical, that are in those leadership positions, honestly, it's one of my favorite things when I have a hard question like that, because I get to be like, I get my hands back on the keyboard. This is going to be all, let's dig in, let's figure out the answer. But I think that there are a lot of leaders within organizations whose products and services may or may not be technical in nature, that themselves are not technical power users. What advice do you have for someone like that, that is not someone who's a power user, who's going to go in there and like knows all of their systems and is going to be querying that stuff themselves, to try to build that same feedback loop of trusting and using data to make hard decisions?
To be honest with you, doesn't matter which business we are in, you are in data business. Let's say you have a coffee shop. Your business have 5 coffee shops you are running. Would you get better profitability and better result for your business if you improve your coffee making or improve your coffee, or you get better boost of your business when you improve your data and you know exactly what kind of promotions you should run and not waste your resources by bringing some products that does not sell and focusing on things that sell? I would argue that if you focus on data, you would improve your business by far much better than you improve your coffee. Your coffee is already good. You just need to focus on your data. So any business, including a coffee shop, is in data business. That's number one to understand. Now, if you are a leader of that organization that you know you don't understand data and you are not good at data, you need to bring someone as your right hand who's really good at data and let that person and trust that person to really help you tremendously. And if you don't do it, that's a mistake. So if you say, I don't know data and I don't want to bring anyone who understands data and kind of being my strong and trusted advisor to run business and help me to run my business, then that's a big, huge mistake. In this age, you are living in maybe 40 years ago, and maybe 40, 30, 50 years ago, it was fine. It's not fine. It's going to be even worse, right? So with AI now part of the equation, we have more acceleration.
Yeah.
It's going to really make things more democratized. It's going to things more kind of accelerated. So if it was a bad mistake, maybe 10 years ago, not to be data savvy, it's a huge and the worst mistake not to be data savvy today. So I don't understand if someone as a leader says, you know, I really don't understand data and I don't want to work with data. And there's no good answer to that. My only answer is bring someone helping you and he's or she's very good at data and trust that person.
So I'm obviously pretty biased on the topic. I think analytics are great and important and valuable. I wouldn't be, in my field if I didn't. But you really hit the nail on the head, in my personal opinion, with that answer. I liken it a little bit to the revolution that was experienced when we had like digitization in the workplace, and personal computers became not just for technical people. Like, absolutely everybody has a smartphone in their pocket. They have a laptop in their bag. Everybody is using that. We do not use pens and paper for very much anymore. Communication are on digital platforms like email and Teams, Slack, text message, all of this stuff. And I think of the type of person that's like, oh, I'm not technical, like I don't do that. And I think you made the point quite well, that is, okay, certainly everybody's different. And I have met all sorts of people that are capable of building and running successful businesses. So it's certainly not prescriptive. But I can say you're undoubtedly leaving money, opportunity on the table to not make data a regular part of the decision making process, and at least getting to a place where
Yep.
you know that that's a piece of the puzzle and finding a way to incorporate it. I want to change gears a little bit, if that's okay with you. You know, we've talked a lot from the advice and expertise standpoint, like basically on things that we know and that you're really good at. I'm curious to know what is the hardest area of making use of data right now for you, and what are you doing to meet that challenge?
We are still, working with humans. We are not yet at the phase that robots are doing everything and, AI agents are, working like your employees and half of your staff are AI agents. We are not there yet, right? So everything starts with human. Data the same. Who is building the data? Who is creating the data? Who is presenting the data? All of those people, are humans. And everything starts with, do they understand data? Do they know how to present data? Do they, have the culture that really data matters? Or they're too easygoing with data, so that caused some kind of problems with the quality of data, because it's tough. If you wanted to really make the data quality great, that requires discipline, that requires extra work. And if you want to really save your time the right way, you can really have a kind of very easygoing approach to data, and then data is not going to. So you have to really take that kind of, um, first analyze the situation. In order to analyze the situation, you need to collect data. So my first step in any organization, including my own organization, is to observe and then look at different parts of the company, different people that we have, and learn that where we are from data readiness perspective. And if you are at the level that, we need to do a lot of work there, then I will really, in my mind, go phase by phase. So I will define phase one in a very practical manner, pragmatic manner. And I would say, okay, we just hired these people and they are on the administration side and they are not data savvy guys. And they are going to really manage everything from processes and finance and HR and everything. But first, let's start to explain and just educate them on the way that data matters, the way data can empower us. And then let's create some reports and improve them every quarter to get where we want. And to be honest with you, some of these journeys has taken me years to get there, but I never dropped the ball. Every quarter, I pushed the envelope a little bit, and the same person that might have joined us as a, not so senior person some years ago, now, that person is really good at data. That person now presents data very well. Now doesn't use the colors randomly. The colors have a meaning when, the colors are being chosen. The font has a meaning. The size has a meaning. The type of chart has a meaning. The data within the chart has to be totally reliable. If there is a data there that is less reliable, it needs to be marked. There is a need for putting articulating some of the caveats there so people understand. Have you explained enough how you created this data? And a lot of other things, that all of those go back to data literacy and data culture, and all of those need to be cultivated with the human resources you have in your in your organization, right? But again, really, that's the way I personally look at it. And maybe I look at another department and I see they are data savvy, they are doing very well, they are way ahead of the curve, and I don't need to really do a lot to push the envelope there and just go there and just, help them. But for most part, I would say it doesn't surprise me if I go and look at the organization or departments one at a time and realize that they are not doing enough about the data, because it requires a lot of work. They need to really spend time to, and if they don't know the value, why should they really spend every day some hours to really do that? You have to really start with realizing the value and then putting the right process in place. And sometimes if they're not doing this, because probably there's a root cause, it doesn't help to just go there and say just do it. It doesn't help. People will find a way not to do it, right? If they want you. I never ever can win that battle. So I always really pay attention to the root cause rather than just trying to fix it. And the root cause normally can be, I don't see the value here. Why should I?
Yeah. Uh, I once again, uh, nail on the head from my perspective. I think that lots of times it turns into this, oh, well, in order to do this analysis that so and so asked for, we have to go yell at this other team. And so we make a different standard operating procedure and we, hit them over the head for compliance with it. Whereas if we just had one conversation and said, the business is trying to make this decision. And when we don't have this information, it becomes really hard to make that decision. So as a member of the team that hopefully wants to see things go well, could you help us out so that we have the information to accurately make these decisions? And what I find is that when people know the why and they can see how their actions have an impact on the rest of their team, people in general are good. They want to step up, they want to help. But when it's just like, I'm just getting yelled at to do something differently and I have no idea why, that's tough. So I probably one of the best ways that I've heard that answer articulated. Thank you for that answer. We got the opportunity to learn quite a bit from you. At least I know I have. I hope the listeners have as well. I'd like to give everybody the opportunity to get to know a little bit more about you. So when you're not founding and running businesses and helping nonprofit boards and thinking about data and all this stuff, tell us a little bit about how you fill your life.
Sure, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. I would love to get in touch with people on LinkedIn. Uh, Also, of course, our website is where people can come in and educate themselves. So Qrvey is qrvey.com. My LinkedIn is just my first name Arman, last name Eshraghi. You can find me. There are so many Arman Eshragis in the world, so there are a few of us. You will find me quickly if you type my name or last.
Yeah, it's not like Ryan Sullivan. There's a million of us, even just in Boston here.
So yeah, so hopefully that will make it easier for people to really find me, and I would love to hear from people actually, and chat about business, chat about data analytics. I love designing games if they are into designing strategy games, and playing strategy games and those kind of things in old-fashioned way. Uh, you know, uh, and anything else. I love hiking, walk and talk. With entrepreneurs, founders. I normally do that whenever I get a chance and regularly. So all of those are great, and I travel a lot. So the chance I be in your, you know, neck of the wood, and then you find me in your neighborhood and your town is not minimum. So I travel a lot. So.
I love it. I'm interested to know a little bit more about the strategy games. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so it has always been a fascination for me because I always thought from the childhood that really life is a game if you look at it that way.
Yeah.
Because we as human, just get together and put some rules, and especially because I have moved from city to city and have lived in different uh, places. I have seen that different really have different rules. People and societies have different rules, and who has really put those rules there. Some people got together and thought that this is a good rule for that society, and either at the a small scale or at the bigger scale, at the country scale, whatever it was, and then they played by rules, and they wanted to have rules. People want to really have a game that they know the rules and they can play it, and that's really our mind probably has been said. We name it sometimes a lawful kind of society, right? Because there are some laws, there are some rules of the game, and you need to know them and play by them, and then that's good. So, looking at that kind of a style, that the whole life is a game. Now, why not really even inventing your own game with some a smaller scale with some people and play around the table with 4 or 5 other people and play it and enjoy it? What if you could change the rules? What if you could change your city? What if you could change, your build a new city for yourself in your mind with 5 people and sitting there pretending that you are playing those rules that you just invented uh, 2 hours ago. And honestly, it's fun. It's fun when you just collaboratively create a game and just you evolve it and then you play it and it works and it's beautiful and it's uh, you know it's a joyful time spending together. And we had so many of those good memories that, I personally enjoy it. And it can be as simple as just, imagine you have a playing card. You can uh, unlimited number of games you can come up with just a playing card, or with some dice, or a combination of playing card, or just a chessboard and dice. I mean, possibilities are endless, and it's great, especially when you are with some like-minded people sitting there, and all of you are creating and helping each other, and then coming up with some new ideas that did not exist just 2 hours ago, and now you have something as a new activity that you just invented. That is giving everybody a very great sense and positive sense.
Yeah, that is an unbelievably light and fun way to like play around with that stuff. I think about that a lot as well, right? You know, the life being a game and being interested in things that mimic that game and allow me to have fun and get better and, learn new things about, ourselves and the world and all that stuff. So that is unbelievably cool. Maybe the next time I have some friends over for dinner, we'll try to make up something new like that. That sounds like a ton of fun. So Armin, you already had the opportunity to talk a little bit about some of the different places that people can connect with you and reach out. I would absolutely encourage any of the listeners that got some value out of what you said to reach out, because I know that I have hugely enjoyed this conversation. So I imagine that another one with someone else would be awesome as well. I would love to thank you for coming on to the podcast, sharing your comprehensive experience. And um, I found that you had ideas that I had heard, but you had the ability and the experience to explain them so simply and approachably, like that type of thing that really just comes with experience, right? It reminds me of the Einstein quote that if you can't explain something to a 5-year-old, you must not understand it well enough. And you were able to explain these ideas that I felt like I had bits and pieces of, but that I couldn't do it at that 5-year-old level. So I'm gonna, have another listen back at this and see if I can't pick up a couple things from you. So thank you so much for coming on. This was such a pleasure.
My pleasure, Ryan, and thank you very much for having me. I enjoyed it as well, and I learned uh, from your questions and discussion too. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. I also want to make sure to thank the audience. If you learned something today or laughed or you enjoyed this conversation, please do us a solid. Tell a friend about the podcast. Give us a like, a subscribe, a rating. Hopefully, a good rating. I guess any press is good press. But I really want to thank you for listening. You guys are a huge part of the engine that keeps this going. Armin, thank you again so much for coming on. And this has been another exciting episode of the Making Better Decisions podcast. Thanks for listening. That's a wrap for today's episode of Making Better Decisions. For show notes and more, visit makingbetterdecisions.live. A special thank you to our sponsor, Canopy Analytic. Canopy Analytic is a boutique consultancy focused on business intelligence and data engineering. They help companies make better decisions using data. For more information, visit canopyanalytic.com. There's a better way. Let's find it together and make better decisions. Thank you so much for listening. We'll catch you next week. Peace.